Disclaimer. This is a video essay. This video essay is not sponsored by anyone but the Compondering Critic and his co-sponsors. This video is also not a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. LibriVox has no relations with Henry the Magnificent Critic. So, why would you think I'm doing this disclaimer? First, this is a disclaimer to draw out that all of my relations and my background knowledge has no authoritarian or no deviant factors in it. So, this video is going to be analyzing what the original God is meant and how it impacts everyone. You see, the original God is the actual name for what we call the Genshin Impact that we know today. Genshin Impact is a social, multi-platform, open world anime game. Well, it's more than that. After we delve into the rabbit hole, you will understand, fellow viewers, this game is more than just a typical anime game. Maybe I give it too much credit, but you may be able to decipher and understand the paradoxical nature of its design in this world of Genshin Impact. First, I won't be delving into the magnificent and paradoxical conspiracy theories that has been centered around the original God that is present in Genshin Impact, which is at the moment of the story is deliberately unknown to the player, and the following statements will be provided within collaboration with other university types of medias. Please stay tuned for more videos that will be available on this YouTube channel, but please take a look at my Anchor FM, which is the same channel's name as my YouTube channel. So before all ado, let's get started on the analysis of this game. Genshin, or in the original Chinese characters, or in kanji, is said to be unknown or original God. Gen in Japanese means origins, or in Chinese also happens to mean origin or original or unknown. The three characters that is example of a lot of games that we tend to not associate with godlyhood or spirituality, and usually it's games that has a pretense talking about individual characteristics that is exhibited in all forms. What I meant by exhibited in form or forms is two characters who are either blood related or not related. An example is in the Western religious hemisphere, or the classical pagan literature of hemisphere, like Bristol and Hegel and other interesting characters. These are mostly from fairy tales, but because Genshin Impact likes to portray in the game at the beginning for us like fairy tales, to a degree, it's set out in a narrative that is typical of your average anime, but also deeply perplexing to a degree, because certain anime features in existing anime, we tend to have a very linear branching set of narratives. In Genshin, it's the opposite. We start off with a flashback to what occurred to either Lumin, that's the female character, the sister, or Eder, that's the male character of the game, whichever gender you choose. it doesn't determine whoever's in this world. Both the brother and sister are trapped in this unknown proprietary world created by the unknown or the highly unknown God. It's not my decision to decide what exactly the unknown God at the moment, because it will only give out the player's urge of like, you think you know everything. Well, according to the hints and the evidence that the game has shown us, the unknown God has somewhat of a relationship to the world of Teviat, which is the fictional worlds present in Genshin Impact. Let's look at the so-called design of this world. It's almost utopic to a degree. The green lush grasses, the real ray traced most lightning, and the lighting is all it's visually stunning, and other than other open worlds. To a degree, it's much more stunning with lush livelihood than Breath of the Wild. But I'm not going to compare Breath of the Wild today, because these are two different worlds designed with different purposes. In Genshin Impact, the world is divided into 7 regions. The first region is Mondstadt, the equivalent of prehistoric Germany, or not prehistoric but medieval parts of the Germany, and it's mashed together with the alternative Chinese, classical Chinese architectures of Liyue, another continent that is based in the Genshin Impact. Currently, there's only 2 continents that is available to play. The third continent is a Japanese continent, is Shukokutaki, some Shugonlet continent. That is not in the current game space as of yet. So for now, I'm going to be delving into the fruits of this game. It's visually stunning. It has a diversity roster of characters. It has a somewhat unique set of switching characters within a roster of 4 characters max you could bring into a battle. Let's forget that we have this focus on player centrism. This game is nothing but a mockery of player agency in a degree. You're going to hear me now why I believe this is a disgrace to players' agency. The game has you believe that you are the hero of the story, the person who's going to solve how to find your sister and solve the miseries that the Mondstadtians have in facing the storm terror. It's an old god of the storm. The storm is like the religion that governs Mondstadtians. This is a special kind of this is a special kind of element that can only be used once in its cyclone form and other repository. This game makes us explicitly that Mondstadtians focus on wind energy. They accumulate wind points and energy in order to have this ultimate attack, which is built on the essence, the Mora, to extent. Mora is most of the world's currency, but at the same time, I'm going to show you that this is more than just a source. If you look at the so-called fruit of labor, when we enter the world, we are greeted with open sky, and if you look up a bit, just a bit, you could see this like the shape of the wind, and it's a clever form of foreshadowing, but it mostly goes unnoticed. The only thing with this is that the game has pre-planned you to move in the prologue. Of course, it should be the introduction to the game, but it's also designed in a way that is somewhat ridicule of the player's choice. It's like giving the player not too much free will in order to decide the perspectives on everything. Who is the one who handles you, who twists your understanding of this world and make you doubt about your understanding of this world that you just arrived? It's the toddler fairy called Paimon. She has this ability to almost read your mind, but at the same time keep what she knows about you a tad bit of massive secret, so that you have to discover in your own accord. And she actively tries to deliberately make you go off the road in a degree, like go off track. What the main objective was to save your sister. She claims that the world she inhabited in this world, she's also new to it. It's only until you learn that you came across one of the knights of Mondstadt, happened to be Amber, who questioned Paimon, and you will understand that Paimon is not as elative as she said to in the beginning. She claimed that she knew part of this new world, Tevia. She explicitly told you that this world is governed by the wind god, the old wind god, and she happens to know a bit about what the dragon is, because normally people who look at a dragon, that what's that, they will be freaked out. Like even a child like her size, she will freak out. But for some reason, because she's like the high magic user that any other games haven't yet discovered, she managed to unalert our suspicion. And if you look closely on her design, she has the constellations on her back, and she has a very strange maybe Easter egg to Kiana Kasanana from the previous game, that's black signature hairpin on her head. But that could be just an Easter egg, you could say. But it's very important to understand that in the world of Teviat, symbols rule the world, just like how symbols almost rule our eternal reality as well. So when we see how the design of the game is portrayed, we first encounter the trees. Before we encounter Amber, we encounter the tree, supposed tree of life. What we see is us to pick up the fruit, or pick up fruit from the tree, and she remarks this is the digestible objects that Mondstadt offers, and this gives you strength. What she's referring to is the Genesis, the book original, where the gardens of Eden. It's a reference to the garden where the snake tempted Eve or Adam to bite from the fruit of the apple of the knowledge, from the tree of knowledge. It's a reference to that. It's almost blatantly explicit that the fruits have its own name, which means first in other languages, in Latin. The fruits is explicitly a reference to how gnosis is obtained, how knowledge is obtained. If you're interested in knowing more about gnosis, please take a look at the research links I will be providing down in the video, and please check it out yourself because it's an interesting read. So please, let's take a break and take a stroll into the first few minutes of Teviat. What do you see? Looks normal, this word. But you also remember that this word is very populated with NPCs. Yet from the beginning we see a word that is almost empty. It's like as if the NPCs are all adherent to the laws of the player's engagement, or the boy or the girl that you control, Ether or Lumin, they both are vehicles for the player to understand that this world is nothing but a gnosis ploy to try to give the players an illusion that this game, as just the word, is but interactive and big. To an extent, it's true that it's interactive, because it's open world model dictated it is. The only issue I have is that how the gameplay transpired over the period of the entirety of the game, of the hour of the gameplay, is the gameplay steadily rises just like the sea waves. It's not a metaphor, but it's an influence on how the designers interpreted the players should encounter. If you guys have known that the common hero's journey in this trope is somewhat solidified in the view that the player is the one that can change everything. Just like how Paimon explained that this world needed a hero or a heroine in its absence. So this world is built on a very strange worship of certain elements of God. It's very pagan in its nature, but it's also very Gnostic. Normally, we would associate paganism with Gnosticism, but it's quite often the case that Gnosticism is analyzed separately from paganism. Please allow me to explain. Paganism is the rituals that is obtained by the old traditions and the old religions. Old religions, like the cultic rituals, tend to be much more closer to the animals and the nature and nature arts than, say, the man's expansive and traversal exploration of Tengrism, which is an older form of the Mongolic religions, which is often not to be confused with Zoroastrianism, because they have almost the same sounding deities, like Tengri and Anu. They are both very important figures in paganism and Zoroastrianism to a degree. Zoroastrianism is a different sort of worship. I'm not going to delve into that, because we're going to look at gnosis and how gnosis knowledge. Gnosis is derived from the Greek term knowledge. To attain gnosis is to reach enlightenment. And in this game, it is said if to reach enlightenment, the player has to learn and connect the special powers that is within each word. For Mondstadt, that is the ultimate form of power, is the cyclone power, the wind energy, the wind element. But in Liyue, that's a different element, mostly fire element. The element of pyro, not cryo. Cryo is cold, ice energy. And as you can tell, this design is not deliberate to be like mechanic based, but it's also fits in the narrative in ways. I might give too much credit to this game, but this game has a perverted understanding of Gnosticism. The Gnostics that is said to have inhabited this earth almost 2,000 years ago has said that explicitly that the humans do not wrestle against flesh and blood, rather against authorities. And it sounds very biblical, but at the same time, the authorities, who are the authorities? The principalities, the states, the statesmen, the archons in this case. The archons are not really gods like what the game portrayed to you. The archon, even its fandom wiki says archons are gods. Even though archons in its term, in the original Greek term, which is not well translated from the Genshin Impact Original God series, is actually meant in Greece to mean rulers or chieftains or principalities of the same nature. And for Genshin Impact to accumulate the idea for the player that archons that you worship and idolize in your archon quest are simply your gods is in essence a twist of Gnosticism in its most dangerous form. Because understand that archons in Gnosticism serve the Demiurge. The Demiurge is it's not fictional, it's a image of a high or worthy god that controls the material realm. In Gnosticism, there is the spiritual realm, there's the spiritual realm and the physical realm inhabited by Demiurge. Demiurge created the physical realm. The material realm is the prison. The physical, unlike the spiritual, is based on arbitrary strong rules that cannot be bent to humans' likings, and inevitably is a prison. The old Gnostics that dictated in the Nag Hammadi writings has stated already that in order to believe that the material realm and the physical realm are just everything is beyond the psychological trap that the archons has placed the curse on the humanity. If you would understand that archons are nothing but objects, nothing but rulers, are like humans. They have no creativity, they have no free will. They abide by rules, they abide by orders set to them by the Demiurge. The Demiurge, if you would understand in the religious terms, is a reference to the Old Testament god Yahweh. Yahweh is considered the high priest of Demiurge. He is the trouble behind most of what the creation, the antithesis of creationism. In this case, creationism in the Gnostic text is the physical and the spirit realm that is dwelled within it, not to do with evangelical creationism. So we have terms that are being corrupted by this game, by MiHoYo specifically, that mean very different things. They deliberately trick us into thinking that the Greek word archon means god, when in actual fact means ruler and chieftain, and a human can also reach archonhood. So please wait a second and immerse on the idea for a second. Think, why does a game try to portray Gnosticism in a light that is inverted reality? We could understand and interpret that the word that of Teviat is based on the rules and not the gravity of humanity, not Earth's gravity. This is a different continent. Imagine the world without Gaia, without Sophia. In this world, it is explicit that the material realm is very elaborate, is very seductive, it's temptatious greed. The world is very beautiful to look at, but later on, as you progress through quest, you uncover something more sinister and darker about these realms that is so seemingly perfect. This world is about to be broken up into pieces as by the Storm Terror, and this old god has started rebellion against the so-called mortal humans that worship them. And you can see, even in the first quests of the land in Mondstadt, when you report Mondstadt, and the more you read around in the books, like especially the predicament of these situations, and you understand to a degree that these Mondstadtians has angered the gods, the old gods, the dragons that they used to pray to. And normally in Gnosticism, dragons means heavily mystical beings, But in this case, as you can see, it can mean two meanings. One being this is mystical carriers that can transcend reality, help humans to reach enlightenment in the form of the dragon. But at the same time, it can be also said that the dragon is more of an obstacle in the game's process for the player to overcome. Yet we have also learned that these, like Storm Terror, they are also a boss. That means the player has to actively go out and execute this boss battle and destroy this boss before it rips a new one into the world of Mondstadt, into the continent of Mondstadt. And in general, we don't know much. The player is deliberately left in the dark about the choice he has other than just killing this divine being or disabling it in the factors. So we can see the more we see, the more darker the road has gone in the material realm. As we can see that in this design, video games has a tendency to personify the ideas that our visions, our choices have very much a meaning to yourself. But in Genshin Impact, you are more like an errand boy as opposed to the hero directly contributing to the story's progression. There seems to be no branching path, as everything is set very linear as it is. The cutscenes is unescapable, and this is odd considering many other single-player games like The Witcher 3, even Persona allows you to skip everything. And I wouldn't call Persona high fantasy either. I would consider Genshin Impact derogatory, more like it's experiment. It's not high fantasy or low fantasy. It tries to be high fantasy, yet it retains a huge amount of realistic attainment of Gnosticism. Gnosticism hasn't changed much other than the 72 demons which are turned into an angelic form. The typical white-skinned and denounced like Lingui Archon and these characters that you can get from drops in the game. This is another kind of thing about this kind of game. It has the audacity to tell you have all the choice in the world to play this game, yet you're restricted by the amount of errands you do. Every game has its limitations, yet Genshin Impact has a massive limitation where the daily quest, after you finish the daily quest, exhilarating as it could be, the main quest has almost no relations to the daily quest you grant to, because the main quest is adventure level rank based, and these determine how you progress through the game. And this is odd because in other games like Witcher, you can still join in the level, you can join an upper level game, yet the enemies will be much harder. In this version, you are not allowed to join exactly that levels requirement. There's a level requirement set that you have to reach before you could join that level, even if your character is significantly unleveled and way below that level. So level threshold. So if you want to level up a character as quickly you could from level 1, because then you can't go back and play the original quest to get more XP. This is one of the design by design. Yeah, this sounds punish, but please listen. This game is designed so that when you progress to a level, they actively ask you to spend money in order to XP, or spend in-game given currencies that you don't pay with your real money. So this is another thing. This world is built on trade and greed and forgery and all that forage through this open world. It also be said that the Gnosis has a specific goal. It is to enlighten to people that the material world is the prison, like the Matrix. Like what Wachowski brothers said, the Matrix is everywhere. It's like in Genshin Impact, the world boundaries are everywhere. It's just that the open world doesn't restrict you to go past on this continent. The only difference these games have is that they restrict your level progression if you do not reach this certain goal threshold. And to be honest, like in games like Witcher 3 and Skyrim, you technically can't progress until you reach a certain level, and when you reach certain level, the quest is triggered, the Archon quest is triggered. But in this case, in Genshin Impact, you can do other little things like playing the fish. You can do the fish, which I unfortunately don't have a gameplay of just yet, and you can communicate with other Mondstadtians about what they think about this world, and you get understand of the world. But most of Mondstadtians are more self-centric, so you won't understand what your main quest is going to be like until you get past and you unlock all the secrets that is Mondstadt. Your trusted companions are knights of Hallelujah or something. I can't pronounce it directly, but Knights of Mondstadt, Knights of Hallelujah, controlled by the captain called Jen, who controls the city within the castle walls. Has given you numerous quests in order to stop Storm Terror or disable him for the benefit of the people of Mondstadt. You see, here's the problem. You are actively involved in the politics of Mondstadt, and that creates a frightening issue, because when you're supporting like the authorities, you inevitably is supporting the hierarchical systems that is present in Genshin Impact or the original God system. So you're actively playing into the hand of not just praying into the hand of what this deity, celestial deity, that is secretly control your any moves, because this selected deity could be that the Paimon is there in order to handle the player and make sure the player doesn't veer off track. That's what I think the whole reason behind Paimon is to keep a track of the player's progression in order to make sure that the player doesn't veer off track or do something he or she will regret further on the game. And that's an interesting thing, because this world is supposed to be open world, open choices, yet we have a toddler fairy whose name is from a well-known Arabic jinn called Kim Paimon, who also happens to be of female lineage face and female, but is a camel rider. But this time she is this genie who can float and can control your thoughts and have you say most what you wanted, except the fact that you would want to eat Paimon as emergency food. That's the only choice that is funny and you have control over most. The quest is what you so-called your companions have to come together to unlock and solve. It's an interesting doubt, but I will give you guys a break and for you to watch my gameplay and have a thought about and dig into my Gnostic analysis. So stay tuned for more. The next podcast will start in the next 10 minutes. The recording will continue in the next 10 minutes. Stay tuned. Adios.
Emily invites you both to our headquarters.
be the Knights of Favonius headquarters. Let's head in.
Jean, what's the hurry? I thought we agreed to meet them here.
There have been sightings of storm terror outside the city. Once we meet, we must...
Relax. I'll lend a hand when the time comes.
Jean, I brought them. And once it was over, I brought them straight here.
Mondstadt welcomes you, Windborn travelers. I am Jean, acting Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius. This is Lisa, our resident librarian.
Oh, are you sweeties here to help us out? You're both so adorable. Sadly, the timing is regrettable. Storm terror has caused quite a ruckus in the region since its recent resurgence. Simply put, Mondstadt's elemental sphere and ley lines are now akin to a yarn ball in the paws of a kitten. For a mage, it couldn't get much worse. My skin is one elemental particle away from a full-blown breakout.
If it weren't for this interference, the Knights of Favonius would have better ways to help you than just putting up missing person posters. We simply ask that you repose in Mondstadt while we help you seek out your sister.
Paimon will help too.
Good. In that case, we need a plan.
With Storm Terror now directly attacking Mondstadt, we may have an opportunity to cut this problem off at the source. Lisa has revealed the sources of Storm Terror's power with her detection magic.
Is that so?
They're located in the abandoned Four Winds temples. Storm Terror's ability to whip up these kinds of storms can be attributed to it drawing power from the temples.
Our objective is to deal with 3 of the 4 temples. I trust everyone understands why we are only dealing with 3.
Paimon doesn't.
Knights of Favonius, time is against us. The storm is rampant. There's no point in maintaining a defensive position. All right, we need to take initiative and act before the situation escalates.
I will protect you.
By the way, did I forget to mention that I think Paimon is the most annoying character in the entirety of Genshin Impact? I feel she's hiding something, like this toddler fairy Jin Kim Paimon Paimon herself cannot be serious. Like the way in the beginning, as you have seen and witnessed, that she really does not care about you. She really doesn't give you a 2 cents much. She pretends. It's quite obvious. She says she knows she's been to this world, yet when questioned by Amber, who's the Night Wanderer, who guards the places amongst the wilderness especially, said she doesn't know her. This is a newcomer as well. So then you have to answer whether who is this little toddler as well you have. Is this your friend? That's what Amber asked you, the player, whether you're Ada or Lumen. Ada is the brother, Lumen is the sister. So what she says is like, hey, that's even worse than cabbage be eaten alive. Like, it's funny in a case. Yeah, it's definitely credit to that. It's quite funny. That's the like out of the only lines that the character managed to, in English at least, managed to do it successfully. And what's with the Paimon cults? Stop worshipping her. All you do if you worship her, she becomes more stronger and starts mess around with your mentality, mess around with your psychology, mess around with the matter in your head. The more value you give her, the more creepy she becomes. To me, she's annoying, irritating, and creepy, and makes me really annoyed. And not just that, sometimes I really want to shut her up. This is no mute button. I asked my friend, there is no mute button on her. Tell her to be quiet, please. Just tone down her voice. By default, her voice is way too loud, way too squeaky. She sounds like Zhang Liu, but the female version, very squeaky. Yeah, so please just she has this weird absence about her. Like she doesn't reveal the entire truth to you until being questioned, cornered by somebody who's supposed to know her somehow. Who is this? Like seriously. And why are we going into temples again? Why we are rising in temples just to find storm terror? Make the storm terror prayers. The people who pray for him, which mostly savages apparently. The savage people of Mondstadt cannot pray for them because apparently Gnostic tradition only the so-called enlightened ones should listen to Gnostics accordingly. But no, savages can't reach enlightenment apparently. Apparently savage people can't reach enlightenment according to the laws of Genshin Impact. Yeah, so Genshin, or whatever it means in this case. So in particular, it's quite, just like you listen to her, it's quite understandable you'll be pissed off, but you see how meager and inaptitude she can be. Yeah, that's what I would say. Paimon is this character that you love to hate, but you also love to say she's valuable to your cast. So this is the problem. We have a dichotomy where who do you stand with Paimon? There are the real life cultists who support Paimon, kind of like mirrors the real life a bit. But you see, this game gives you a lot of conflict, and this conflict, other enemies don't do it. Well, it's good when they do it, but technically this, like I said, it's this show not tell is not being done correctly. Like, for example, Paimon knows about everything, yet she doesn't know about simple things like, it's like playing into tropes, which is unideal. And it's like in this revolutionary game, you should have a different take on these tropes, right? But instead, we are stuck with either we like Paimon or just like we don't care about any other cast. We technically do about certain other cast, but she's like the entry's character is like Amber. Amber's like this character just there to be fun, to be hyperactive. She has an upbeat character, and I like the voice actress. Her voice actress is very good. She of course, yeah, she did a lot of famous voice acting, of course. But how she played the character is that's what I judge. She played it perfectly. Forgot the name, but Amber was a perfectly controlled character. But my confusion is, why couldn't the game designers decide to not force you to listen to Paimon? You could have instead you had two narrators. We have Paimon, the somewhat unreliable, wise narrator to extent, and we have the humble yet hardworking, ethic-wise narrator who helps you explore what's Mondstadt, what's this region like. Really, you're a traveler. She knows you're a traveler, so it makes more sense to have a native of Mondstadt explain about what the situation is. Technically they do, but it's mostly mission based. So this redistribution of jobs becomes quite overwhelming for certain players. It becomes almost fourth wall breaking. So instead, what they could have solved is, I gave a solution. Just have Amber do the talking most of the time, and Paimon just do the like, how can I help you, sir? Or utilities girl, not a utilities toddler, rather than this guide. Like, she's so annoying, honestly. Like, Paimon is so annoying, and ethic-wise, if I think the reason she's so annoying because she gets on people's nerves by trying to pick at the very simplest sense that players knows and says, and she talks at the wrong time. She talks literally during conversations the loudest. I think it's deliberate. They amplify their voice to like her even more. She's like innocent, like a bit naive child. It doesn't play good in a video game. Like in an anime, I think it will work, but in a video game, the narrative had to be adapted to suit the game exploration. And unfortunately, Genshin Impact messed that up with that because they had an unreliable narrator who I'm already suspecting that she's connecting to the how your sister or brothers sisters be missing, sister and brothers in the game is missing, either one you play. So yeah, so I was thinking that maybe the unknown god has connection, or maybe like she's the avatar, Paimon's the avatar of the unknown god, and she was sent there in order to confuse and mislead the character. But in the end, maybe she doesn't do that because genes can be good or bad. It's this. Yeah, I wouldn't say this game is like in terms of character design is bad. I think it's tropes. I think the design is tropified. I wouldn't say. I think the design is decent. They're not the best, but they had a lot of work into it. That's I'm glad. So the characters' dynamics are still lacks a bit of depth until you read the biographies. But as you can tell, reading biographies during your character bios and during gameplay is rather tedious task. It's like reading a book. It's unfun. So you play a game in order to reach funness. But sometimes video games does require you need to read instruction manuals. But most of the time, instruction manuals shouldn't be this long. And so the solution to this is, let's have Amber to do most of the directing. And she has this awesome flame bow, in my opinion. It's quite explosive. And she also has the awesome psychic Bali doll. You sue her and she becomes this ticking time bomb, but she dances. And until the enemy hits her, she becomes a hittable target. And after 2 or 3 hits, she explodes and creates a fireball napalm bomb, which is really helpful in really close quarter combat. It distracts the enemy close quarter combat. The game design in this, character specific abilities is very awesome. It's awesome. The abilities are done really well, but the problem with the abilities now is that they can be extremely repetitive. For like Amber, she's like the starting archer, and it's good to have a starting archer, but at the same time, you need to understand that this game requires variety. It's not just simple Pokemon and just collect and play. You have to go through a whole banner, and in the standard banner, normally Amber drops and you can level her up. But most of the time, it's annoyance because when you shoot, when you aim the arrow, like so-called passive ability she has, it makes you slow down a lot. It makes you slow down by approximately 40% to 50% of your movement speed, which becomes a hindrance when you'll be targeted by multiple enemies who can stun you. And the interesting about characters like Amber and Kia is that when they get locked back, they have their own unique voice line. It's really funny. Like when Amber get locked back, says, not fair, you cheated." A quote. She just say cheated. You cheated. It's not fair. Oh, stop doing that. And Kia is just like, "Oh, you got the best of me. Oh, you got to do this. Oh, yeah." It's like it's a bit repetitive, but this is a good repetitive. But the problem I think is with the gameplay in terms of like the weapons are homogenized, the movesets are also homogenized. I'm not talking about the abilities. The normal and the heavy attack movesets are extremely homogenized, with the exception of the 4-star characters. So the starting characters are very homogenized, with the exception of Diluc as well, which I haven't unlocked either. So yeah, so if they could dynamify the movesets a bit more, less homogenized and less cloned to an extent, but I don't think cloning is a massive deal. Homogenization is the biggest problem. So thanks for listening, and please just listen to the third part as well. This is an interesting podcast. I try to do the best as I could. The Tree of Life. Well, technically speaking, the life that is within the tree, and it's the tibia. There's no central tree in any of the continents, so it is based off those pillars, those totems that were called, those in games. Those exactly is totems of what went pagan gods. Those are, and you can notice there's a mark on one of the totems. It shows the star of Inanna or Ishtar, or it's the unknown god star. So these powers are of the unknown god. It's the same symbol, so we have to really do not confuse this idea with Inanna and other aspects of our generations of to come. These ideas of Inanna and the spirits away is really controversial because these are embedded within Gnosticism to mean enlightenment, or it could mean the false enlightenment converged by the Demiurge, like was some like Hammadi writings, the Gospel of Thomas has said. It's that's the God and the Jesus within you, or something like that. I'm quoting it, I'm not trying to sound like a pastor. So the Lag Hamadis also mentioned about how there is false prophet, false messiahs, and these false messiahs can be come as original, so-called original gods that are dressed up as so-called the material god, something that is material, and they said that in the spirit, that's the original god that fear is actually the spirit's god, the Abraxas. Abraxas is spelled Abraxas, Abraxas, and these gods are motifs for God of the heavens or God of the earth. and god of the lightning. There are different gods that concern the aeons, that serve the Abraxas, or the opposite to Demiurge, the spiritual realm. So normally, like in the Colossus, normally, even like I'm referencing another game, Shadow of the Colossus, these colossi, they're representative of spirit animals. These are like spirit animals in a lot of religions, including zodiac Chinese religions, folk Chinese religions. These are important because they derive of the importance of religious context. If you guys can't hear me clearly because of the quality of my microphone, please deal with that, because this is all my microphone that could fathom now, that my other microphone doesn't work. So this one is just, like what I said, the conflict between the dichotomies, the not monotheism, but that in the end, in Gnosticism, there is only one true God. That's what the core belief is. There's one true G, and the grand architect, that is the God, not the example of the ideas that the God is the person who rules us all and gives laws and that forgives your compassion. That exactly opposite. The person who supposedly ruled this realm is actually the original creator, according to. So for it to be the original God, it has to create, not destroy, not just simply destroy. You have to create through the spiritual, and the physicals, as you see in the game, is embodied by material realm. These material realm are hardened surfaces which cannot be creative at all. They are immobile. So we have a situation within the within the caveat universe, is that there is such a thing as the spirits that indwendle within the material realm, that manifested themselves into an arc beam, and these are within the player. And for the player to be manipulated by the opponents of the spirit realm, which is the material realm, the gods of the material realm, is a massive conflict that I hope the game developers start to develop in the future of this game, because in this way, that is how the game managed to compel and manage to trace the steps it needs in order to fathom and exploit the ideas of this limitless world of caveat. So thank you again, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel and have a listen, have a look at the gameplay footage. This is all I could do with my footage, so please enjoy the hour-long footage. Thank you, take care.
If I'm not mistaken, the end of the temple should be up there.
Wait, how do you know?
Experience. The kind of experience you get after years of dealing with things like this for others.
So, what do I say about Genshin Impact as a game? Compare it as a game, other than its religious symbolism and other forms of exploitative gacha mechanics and reason system, which I have not dealt with because other YouTubers I managed to deal with already. But I'm going to just say for sure that this game is promising. It has potential, but I don't think it's at the complete stage yet. I wouldn't even say this game is at its complete edition yet, because this service has proven that the developers only seem to care about the consistency of the narrative as meager as just trying to sell you a product. So, unless there's drastic change to the narrative description as well as the ludology. Ludology is the game mechanics, in this case, gameplay. The gameplay does not fit with the narrative to an extent where the players has to be handled or manhandled, toddler handled by Paimon, this floating gene of a character. That's what I'm so annoyed. In an open world setting, it should be the player's agency. The lack of player agency is what drove this game to its dissatisfaction in my gameplay. I felt really dissatisfied to play the main quest because it's so it's so linear, so boring. It doesn't give you much to discover and wow. It's more like you being manhandled says, what we should do this the typical JRPG fashion. This game tries to be too much. I think they should have just saved that for later. Instead, I think it's better for players to discover the area first before being sprouted out with exposition. I'd rather prefer exploring first before exposition. But people will say, wow, the game allows you to explore areas without walls. That's a credit to the game, of course, but it's not a necessity. If you design the level in order to introduce the players other than just to look at and not explore it, there's something fundamentally inefficient with that model, because you miss hidden gems. Most people who like open worlds, they want to find the hidden truth beneath every area or every battle. They want to tell their own story. In open world games, it's more like you, the hero, tell their own story, not you be led into a mystifying, overwhelming. It's not the main objective to tell flabbergasting and extraordinary story in an open world. Like, look at Minecraft. That's an open world game. It built on creative construction and creative destruction. What I mean by creative construction, constructing objects in order to fulfill a certain objective for the players to be satisfied and fun. In the other case, it's being objectively destructive in where you destroy the natural landscape and rebuild it in your own image, like how you play God. When I originally thought Genshin Impact was like talking about original God, I thought the idea it was you, the players, is the original God, but you don't know yet. But the more I delve into the narrative, it feels I'm more detached from the idea that you are at the center stage of the gameplay and the narrative. It feels like you're an errand boy. You're a boy who's there to play the errands of the Mondstadtians and the Niyuans, the Chinese other subrace of Archons within the Archonic Demiurge universe. So we have a struggle here. We do have struggle. But the struggle is not based off of enemy difficulty, because when I played it, it was rather boring. The enemies' varieties are quite linear. There's only a very little variety in the fighting. So the gameplay is more like you mash two buttons, the mouse click left and right, then you sometimes on cooldown after you press a E, special ability, special attack. Then you have to wait a few seconds more. And the more you have to do this, the more become repetitive really quickly and becomes dull. And there's no exact counter. You have to just dash everywhere before you can launch an attack. I think you have way too much dashing capabilities at the moment. I like when battles get intense, but the AI is pretty stupid. As you can see in the previous video when I was talking, the AI is like couldn't like knows you're behind it, but instead of just like going around you or try to scatter you before you, what they did is basically destroy the box and come towards you, which is the dumbest thing ever. Because if it's a brick wall, if it's a brick, they're hitting the brick and hitting the brick object like it's summer. It's just like, come on. Efficiency and proficiency as well as consistency is almost outside of the window in the design of this. So I wouldn't say the story is typical narrative. I think there's room for a lot of expansion. It makes you wonder what they were doing. It's an interesting narrative, but I wouldn't say it's an Oscar-winning writing. I wouldn't say it's even BAFTA or Emmy Awards writing, but it quite frankly was able to introduce the numerous scenes and levels. But I think stories are continuous in dichotomy. They're not this. It feels detached and fragmented to an extent because you're doing these errands with players. You had to find these characters in order to perform a new sort of balance between. I like the gameplay to an extent. The bow, it's very flashy, but at the same time, it's only one attack. And previously, because I also had to pay a lot of money in order to progress, which is the most outrageous thing I ever heard. Pay to progress. Really? You're going to just give us the choice to pay to progress and now you do a level up, just instantly become powerful. That's just ridiculous, man. Just the more money you do, it's like the players doesn't have any sense of agency in like the control. It's mostly behind the gacha loot boxes, and that's what I'm concerned. The gameplay is fabulous to an extent, but it needs to be squatted down to an extent. So what's my verdict on this game? So far, I wanted to give this game a 5 out of 10, but because they had a lot of effort putting the visuals into the VFX, including the dynamic characters like Kia, the blind eye Taupi Emperor Wei character Taupi, but it's not in the gameplay. But most importantly is Amber and Lisa. They're really interesting characters, to be honest. They're dynamic. Yet I haven't unlocked Lisa, unfortunately. So I did unlock Noah and the other girl called, I think, Sucrose. Yeah, she's literally sugar. Okay, so other than that, I would say this game has potential, has its charm, but it's ruined by its inconsistency. You try to satisfy everyone when instead you should be trying to satisfy a small niche, and maybe a niche of gamers, not a tiny niche. So what I give the final verdict out of 10, I gave a 6 out of 10. I wanted to give a 7, but unfortunately it's just unfinished. It's so unfinished. I can't give a complete until it's finished. So for the first part of the game, it's 6 out of 10. It could have been a 7 out of 10 if Paimon wasn't that annoying and authoritarian to an extent, controlling of the player. She's supposed to be like a prologue narrator, but she acts like she knows everything for you. She's like your tour guide, like your handler. Some people really hate this. Like, open world, you have a handler. Ridiculous to a degree. Like, for example, in Skyrim, there wasn't any handler. In Minecraft, there's no handlers. So I think they should keep it as the classic gameplay. The combo system, they should widen it from just 4 strings of normal attack. They should widen it to include 6 strings or 7 strings of normal attack and 6 or 5 power attacks. Or they could have just easily copied what Tecmo Koei had for Samurai Warriors, which was hyper attacks. So guys, if you wanted to say anything else to me, you can criticize my video as you like, but this is my genuine review of what the game is. And plus, Paimon, with your Gnostic symbolism and you support the unknown gods, the star of Ishtar and Inanna, you guys should research and check it out, because that is actual Gnostics, and it's the Gnostic terminology of what it's to be agnostic is very embedded in the stories of what we have to uncover so far. So we have to fight Storm Terror, and Storm Terror, as you can see, is symbolic of not the Demiurge, but the servants of Abraxas, who is said to be dragons. So you see, so we are actively being buffooned and fooled into being temporarily the anti-hero for fighting fighting a dragon, and the dragon Storm Terror is friendly to Viti. And at the current moment, I don't know what Viti's storyline is like, because firstly I haven't unlocked him, and secondly I haven't got to the place where the NPC is father and talk to him yet. So I think it's a good story at the near end, but the prologue for the game is just, well, it needs some improvement. I'm not really happy about it, but it's decent enough that it can have a top score of 6.5 or 6. Originally I wanted 5.5, but I decided it's 6 or somewhat 6.5ish, near the 7. So thank you guys, please enjoy this video, and I hope you liked it. Please subscribe to me.